Eleanor stood with her cider glass raised, expecting gratitude. What she got was a goodbye. The applause hadn't yet settled into silence when Jenna took one confident step forward, her heels clicking softly against the reclaimed wood floor. Behind her, the office wall bore a framed photo. Two young women arms flung around each other, beaming in matching polo shirts with a banner that read, "Mayfield Sisters Foods, Taste the Honesty." The photo had once stopped people in their tracks. Now no one seemed to notice it at all. Jenna's voice rang bright, just as it had in every investor pitch since late summer. "What an incredible year we've had," she began, smile-wide arms open as if embracing the entire team. "New markets record orders, 2 new product lines launched. None of it would have happened without every single person in this room." Murmurs of agreement passed through the crowd. Some lifted their glasses. Others nodded while chewing on pecan pie. Eleanor stood off to the side, hands folded, watching the faces of the 27 people who now formed the heart of their company. She recognized most, though more and more were new hires. She smiled quietly, proud but tired. And of course, Jenna continued, eyes glinting, "We wouldn't be here today without my sister." A few people clapped. Eleanor gave a slight nod. Eleanor was the one who started this journey with me in our mother's kitchen. When we were baking granola bars for the Saturday farmers market in Ziploc bags, soft chuckles rolled across the room. She built the framework, the values, the tone of our brand. Eleanor's hands tightened around her glass, and now Jenna said, her voice tightening ever so slightly, "It's time to take the next step. As we evolve into a national brand, we need dynamic, future-facing leadership. That's why, effective immediately, Eleanor will be stepping down from day-to-day operations." The room froze. A fork clinked against a plate somewhere in the back. One of the interns looked confused, mid-sip of cider. Another staffer, a packaging manager. Eleanor had trained herself, slowly set down her pie. "She'll always be part of our origin story," Jenna added quickly. "But as we enter this new chapter, I'll be leading the charge as CEO, and I hope you'll join me in thanking Eleanor for all she's done." The applause that followed was hesitant. A few people clapped out of reflex. A few didn't clap at all. No one looked directly at Eleanor. She didn't flinch. She smiled gently, nodded once, and lifted her glass as if to toast. "Thank you," she said. It was the only thing she said. Then she stepped back quietly, slipping past the conference table, past the catering trays, past the pumpkin bread Mabel Green had dropped off that morning, wrapped in a floral napkin. She didn't stop to speak to anyone, didn't look back at the photo of the 2 girls in matching polos. Outside, the air was sharp. The sky was gray but not angry, just the kind of sky that makes sweaters feel heavier and the smell of nutmeg more vivid. Eleanor pulled her knit scarf tighter around her shoulders. It was the same one she'd worn every Thanksgiving for the past 8 years. The parking lot behind the office was mostly empty. A light dusting of frost had settled on the windshields. Her old Honda sat at the far end alone as usual. She walked slowly, the gravel crunching under her boots. Each step felt more like punctuation than motion. She didn't cry. Not here. Not now. As she opened the car door, she took one last look at the rooftop of the office. Lights twinkled in the windows. Someone inside laughed, but it was too distant to know who. She sat down, closed the door, and rested her hands on the steering wheel. Then, as the engine hummed to life, she began to hum along with it. A quiet tune, something from childhood. Their mother's Thanksgiving song. The one she used to sing while kneading dough with her sleeves rolled up and her wedding ring tucked in a ceramic bowl. She reached for her phone screen, lighting up her face in the dusky car. One notification glowed, a message from Franklin Choi. The final transfer is complete. 3 months earlier. Eleanor sat in the back corner of Cafe Woodbridge, stirring honey into her tea as Franklin slid over a folder. The cafe hummed with a low afternoon rhythm, iced glasses clinking quiet jazz from the overhead speakers, and the soft creak of the front door each time someone pushed it open. August in Vermont meant sticky air, the kind that clung to skin even in the shade. The ceiling fans overhead did more to move thoughts than breeze. But in this corner of the cafe, the heat suited Eleanor just fine. She wore a loose linen blouse, hair tucked simply behind her ears, and a soft cotton tote bag resting on the bench beside her. Franklin Choi sat across from her, blazer still buttoned despite the heat. He placed the folder on the table without flourish, its brown edges already softened from travel. "It's all there," he said, voice low but certain. "Registered, verified, Maplebridge. Holdings is yours." Quietly. Eleanor didn't reach for the folder. She stirred the tea one more time. The barista, a young woman with a blonde bun and an embroidered apron that read "Breathe and Brew," brought over a small plate with a single oatmeal raisin cookie and gently set it down. "On the house." "Ms. Mayfield." "I added the cinnamon stick the way you like." Eleanor smiled, nodded, but said nothing. The napkin tucked under the cookie bore the cafe's hand-stamped logo, one she'd quietly helped preserve when the owners couldn't make rent that past winter. She hadn't told anyone, not even Jenna. Franklin waited. He was used to silence with Eleanor. He respected it. "I keep wondering," Eleanor said finally, eyes on the tea swirling in its ceramic mug. "If they knew I was doing this, would it change anything?" Franklin tilted his head slightly, considering maybe. "But if the goal is stability, not recognition, does it matter?" Eleanor finally took the folder and opened it. The paperwork was straightforward, distant names, layers of entities, blind trusts. Nothing that traced directly back to her, just like she'd requested. The memory of the last board meeting flickered in her mind like an unwelcome visitor. Jenna, animated and persuasive, had presented a bold restructuring proposal without so much as a draft sent to Eleanor beforehand. "It's not personal," Jenna had said later when pressed. "It's just where the market's going." That night, Eleanor had made her decision. Back in the present, Franklin pointed to a signature line. "You're not signing away control. You're establishing it quietly." She picked up the pen. Her handwriting was slow but firm. As she signed the final page, her initials rested beneath the name of a company no one knew she controlled. Later that evening, back at her small house near the lake, Eleanor sat on the porch steps with a glass of iced chamomile. The breeze smelled of damp grass and distant firewood. Across the street, Mabel Green walked over carrying a small bundle wrapped in gingham cloth. "I brought cornbread. The real kind. Not that dry stuff they sell at the co-op," Mabel said with a wink. Eleanor chuckled softly and made room. They sat side by side for a few minutes without speaking. The sound of cicadas rose and fell like a tide. Mabel looked out toward the lake. "You've been quiet lately. I've had things to think about. You always do. But let me tell you something, dear." Mabel handed over the warm bundle. "You don't have to prove anything. Just keep being who you are." Eleanor unwrapped the cornbread slowly, the steam rising like a ribbon. She broke off a corner, handed it to Mabel, and took a bite herself. Back inside, she opened her laptop and saw Franklin's confirmation email. Everything had cleared. The folder sat beside the laptop. The edges of the document still carried the scent of coffee and cinnamon. She closed the lid, set her teacup in the sink, and locked the door for the night. Franklin. Once it's public, they'll have to deal with the truth. Until then, let your silence work. By Monday, Jenna was the face of the company. By Wednesday, she couldn't answer a single vendor's call. The break room still smelled faintly of nutmeg and clove remnants of the Thanksgiving toast lingering in the air. A half-eaten slice of pecan pie sat abandoned on the counter, its crust starting to curl at the edges. Someone had stuck a sticky note on the fridge. "Do not throw away," Jenna said. "Save." But no one seemed to know what it referred to anymore. Todd Rivera stood near the back window, sipping burnt coffee from his thermos. Snow had started to fall outside light at first, like powdered sugar settling over the town square. The wreaths had gone up overnight, red bows, gold bells, and hand-stitched reindeer pinned to lampposts. He watched an older couple walk past the office, pausing to admire the wooden ornaments strung between trees. Then he looked back down at his laptop. The procurement portal blinked red. Again. He'd been getting system alerts all morning. Delayed vendor approvals pending renewal requests. Inconsistencies in the new invoice templates. None of it made sense. The platform was Eleanor's domain. No one had touched its core code in years, mainly because no one understood how Jenna breezed into the room a few minutes later, wearing a crimson blouse and that same bright energy she always carried into press interviews. Teams she called clapping twice. "Don't forget, innovation brunch starts in 20. We're pushing toward new supplier integrations, and I want everyone aligned." Todd gave a short nod. The HR intern, Maya, fresh out of UVM, tried to hide her yawn. "Vendor syncs will be fluid by Friday," Jenna added, adjusting a gold chain on her wrist. "We're modernizing every touch point. No more old-school bottlenecks." Todd's fingers hovered over his keyboard. The term bottlenecks echoed louder than she probably meant it to. 20 minutes later, the team was gathered in the main conference space, which Jenna had rebranded the Growth Den. A new projector screen showed flashy diagrams and phrases like velocity pipelines and supply chain harmonization. The bagels were stale. The fruit was cubed too small, but Jenna spoke with such clarity that half the team didn't notice, until someone from logistics raised a hand. "There's a hold on the granola packaging order," she said. "Vendors said it requires investor-level confirmation." Jenna paused mid-slide. "Investor? Confirmation?" "Yes," the woman said. "They won't move forward without it." Jenna clicked to the next slide. "Probably just old terms from the last system." "We'll override it." Todd shifted in his seat. Something was off. Back at his desk, he reopened the flagged contract. It had a digital signature disguised, but the formatting was specific. Tucked in the metadata was a reference ID that made his stomach tighten. Years ago, Eleanor had built a shortcut system that embedded internal markers for major approvals. It was her failsafe. If anything required override from her, it would ping a line of code that no one else knew to look for. This one had that marker. He pulled up 2 more documents. Same marker, same structure. Maya from HR appeared at the door holding her phone like it had bitten her. "Hey." Random question. Was Ms. Mayfield ever involved in the investor relations team? Todd blinked, no. Why I overheard Jenna on a call sounded like she was trying to update vendor contracts, but someone pushed back. Said the principal investor hadn't responded yet. She seemed really not okay. He returned to his screen. The contract template carried a secondary approval key labeled MBH, an acronym he recognized from a buried folder Eleanor had once let him peek into back when he shadowed her for a summer internship. Maple Bridge Holdings. That was weeks before anyone had heard of it. He sat back in his chair, pulse tapping in his ears. That night, Jenna stood in the corner of her loft, giving a live interview to a local startup podcast. The host, A peppy guy with slicked hair and a sweatshirt that read, "Pivot or Die," leaned into the mic. "Big moves at Mayfield Foods. Talk to us about leadership shifts." Jenna smiled, all teeth and light. "We've evolved beyond legacy management," she said. "The company's vision is finally aligned with the speed of the market." Todd watched the live stream with the sound off, rereading one of the flagged approvals. His eyes scanned line by line, trailing the hidden path Eleanor had left behind. Each breadcrumb led to one conclusion. The procurement system wasn't broken. It was behaving exactly as it was meant to. He scrolled to the bottom of the latest rejection notice, saw the final line. Action required confirmation from principal stakeholder. He sat very still for a moment, then whispered under his breath, "No way. She's the investor." The morning headlines praised Jenna's leadership, but in the inbox of every supplier, a single name caused hesitation. Outside the office windows, a line of snowplows rumbled slowly past the corner of Maple and Ellison. The town's main street looked like a postcard, ribbons on every lamppost, wreaths hung from church doors, and the faint smell of pine floating from a nearby tree lot. Inside the Mayfield Foods headquarters, however, the mood was anything but festive. Jenna stood at her desk back, stiff eyes locked on a blinking email thread. Her inbox was full, not with congratulations, but with polite deferrals, pending investor approval. One vendor wrote, "Awaiting final authorization," said another. A third email included a direct refusal to proceed until confirmation was received from Maplebridge Holdings. She clicked through tabs quickly, hoping it was a glitch. Everything should have been streamlined after last week's rollout. She'd fired off statements made, calls appeared on 2 podcasts touting the company's agility. She'd even redesigned the holiday packaging herself, less homespun, more national. She hadn't heard from Franklin Choi since September. And yet there it was. His name in a thread she'd been CC'd on, replying to one of their largest clients with 5 short words. "We'll address this directly tomorrow." No signature, no clarification. Just calm finality. Across the building, Todd Rivera sat in a conference room with his laptop open, elbows resting on a spiral-bound notebook. The documents on his screen weren't from the company's internal drives. They were pulled from Vermont's Business Registry financial disclosures, and one password-protected folder Eleanor had once told him to ignore for now. He hadn't ignored it. Maplebridge Holdings had been established in mid-August, quietly. It shared a mailing address with an office suite in downtown Boston. Franklin's office, the legal signatory on the founding form, had used a set of initials EM. Todd leaned back. He'd seen Eleanor's initials before, neatly printed at the bottom corner of sticky notes she left in old training manuals. Same slant, same spacing. He wasn't a lawyer, but he didn't need to be. A knock on the glass startled him. Jenna entered without waiting for a response. "Are you snooping through confidential files?" she asked, voice clipped. Todd closed the laptop slowly. "They're public filings." Her eyes flashed. "You had no right to go digging through that." "I wasn't digging," he replied. "I was trying to understand why 3 of our key vendors halted shipments today." Jenna crossed her arms. "It's a system bottleneck. We're realigning contracts." "It's not the system," Todd said. He pulled up a scanned copy of the latest rejection. "They're following Protocol 1 that was built in years ago by Eleanor." Jenna stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "So what, you think she's sabotaging us now?" "No," he said calmly. "I think you fired the only person who could have fixed this." She froze, lips parted but no words formed. Todd didn't press. He knew the silence said more than an argument could. That evening the town was still. Snow continued its steady descent, the kind that softened footsteps and quieted even the busiest corners. Todd's home office glowed with the light of two screens, one showing archived internal chat logs, the other an email from Franklin, subject re, Mayfield Holdings Structure, Mr. Rivera. I appreciate your diligence. I've already reached out to the board. We will address this matter at the appropriate level. Franklin Choi, Legal Counsel, Maplebridge Holdings. Down the street, someone hung a wooden Happy Holidays sign in a bakery window. The lights flickered gently behind layers of frosted glass. Jenna returned to her loft, threw her coat onto a chair, and slammed her laptop shut, her hand trembling. Eleanor arrived 15 minutes early as always. She took the seat no one else dared to claim hers once. The boardroom smelled of pine and furniture wax, the walnut paneling dark with polish and memory. Snow layered thick outside the arched windows, softening the world into a whisper. A silver coffee pot sat untouched at the sideboard, steam curling quietly into the air. No one else had arrived yet. She sat with her hands folded in her lap. Her navy coat unbuttoned, the silver pin on her collar glinting faintly in the low light. Her mother's a shape of a small leaf, barely larger than a thumbnail. The chair beneath her still creaked slightly to the left, just as it had a year ago. No one had ever bothered to fix it. When Franklin entered, he nodded once, his briefcase in one hand and a manila folder in the other. "They'll be here in 5, he said. Eleanor didn't look up. Any pushback. He placed the folder neatly before her. Not yet. Outside tires crunched faintly over fresh snow. Through the courthouse windows, the streets of Burlington moved slowly. A bundled pedestrian passed head down, bells jingled faintly from the corner bakery. The world had not stopped for this meeting, but it felt like something inside of it had. The board members filtered in with quiet greetings and layered expressions. A few nodded to Eleanor, cautious, polite. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Jenna arrived last. Her coat was damp with melting snow at the hem, and her hands trembled slightly as she pulled back the chair farthest from Eleanor. Franklin stood. "Thank you all for making time on short notice," he said with the calm of someone who knew the weight of words. This meeting was convened at the request of Maplebridge Holdings. As the primary investor of record for Mayfield Foods, our client wishes to clarify recent misunderstandings and chart a course forward. He opened the folder. The documents before you outline the capital acquisition that took place in August. $50 million was invested through a third-party holding company to preserve company liquidity, support operational scale, and avoid public dilution. One board member raised an eyebrow. Another cleared his throat. Franklin continued turning a page, all legal, fully registered, and until now undisclosed at the express request of the investor. Jenna leaned forward. "Isn't that a violation of disclosure requirements?" "No," Franklin replied, voice even. "Silence isn't omission. It was protection." The words hung in the air. Eleanor stood. Her voice was quiet but carried. "I didn't want attention. I wanted stability." She paused, looking at each of them without accusation. "When I saw the direction things were headed, the speed, the risks, the disregard for structure, I made a choice to stay involved, but not in the way I used to be, not to control, but to safeguard." Jenna's lips parted, but no sound came out. "I'm not here to reclaim a title," Eleanor continued. "I'm here because we built something that mattered, and we're losing it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a single photograph, the same one from the old break room wall. She placed it gently at the center of the table. "If you want new leadership, make it new in spirit, not just in strategy. This company was meant to serve, not just grow." There was a long silence. The chairman looked around, then finally spoke. "We'll vote now." The tally was swift, 4-1. One abstained. Jenna remained motionless as the verdict settled into the grain of the table. Eleanor stepped back, slipping the photograph into her coat pocket. "I decline reinstatement," she said simply. "My part in this is done." She nodded once to the room, then turned and walked toward the door. The hallway was quiet. The snow outside had grown heavier. She pressed the elevator button. Footsteps approached behind her. Jenna's voice came low, almost a whisper. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Snow dusted the windowsills as Eleanor brewed coffee in her antique kettle, the world moving slower now. The house was quiet, not the heavy kind of silence, but the warm, settled kind, like a favorite wool sweater wrapped around the shoulders. The smell of dark roast filled the air as the kettle hissed faintly on the stovetop. On the kitchen table, the newspaper sat folded next to a well-worn book, its spine cracked and soft from years of rereading. The wall calendar still showed November. Eleanor hadn't flipped it since the morning she was asked to step down. She didn't feel bitter about that anymore. The living room glowed with soft light. Knit blankets were draped over the arm of the couch, and the small pine tree in the corner decorated with a few wooden stars, and dried orange slices added just enough Christmas to feel festive without being loud. A knock came at the door. She opened it to find Mabel Green bundled in a plaid scarf, cheeks pink from the cold, holding a tin wrapped in a tea towel. "Molasses cookies," Mabel said, stepping inside. "I remembered you liked them soft in the middle." "You remembered right," Eleanor replied with a smile. They sat for a while sipping coffee and watching the snow gather along the sidewalk. Mabel looked at the calendar on the wall and gave a knowing glance but said nothing. Instead, she reached into her coat and handed Eleanor a card, simple and unsealed. "You should read it when you're alone," she said. "It's from Jenna." Later that evening, Eleanor sat in her reading chair with the card in her lap. The lamp beside her cast a golden halo across the page as she opened it carefully. The handwriting on the front, unmistakable, neat, but slightly rushed, like someone still learning to slow down. "Dear Eleanor, I've started and torn up this letter more times than I'll admit. I wanted to say sorry, but the truth is it doesn't feel like enough. So instead, I'm writing you a story. Do you remember the first time we tried to sell granola at the summer fair? I was furious because the labels smudged and you just laughed and offered every customer a free sample. You said kindness fixes more than it costs. I didn't understand then. I thought leadership meant being right. You showed me it means being kind." Eleanor paused. Her fingers rested on the edge of the card, heart quiet. No apology, just truth. The next morning, she walked into Cafe Woodbridge, the doorbell chiming overhead. The place smelled like nutmeg and old books. The barista behind the counter looked up and beamed. "Morning, Ms. Mayfield." "Usual?" She nodded. As she reached for her wallet, the barista waved her off. "It's on the house today. Thank you for everything. Back at the company offices." Todd stood in front of the old wall near the reception desk. He gently mounted a new plaque in the space where the old mission statement used to hang. The wood was dark, the lettering simple, founded with integrity by E.M. No fanfare, no press release, just truth. That afternoon, Eleanor received a short email from Franklin. It read, "You've done more than save a company. You reminded them how to build one." She closed her laptop, pushed back from the desk, and picked up her scarf from the hook by the door. Outside, the streets shimmered under the weight of new snow. Lights twinkled along rooftops. Children pulled sleds past storefronts. Eleanor walked slowly, letting the air fill her lungs. As she entered the park, flakes caught in her scarf and melted gently against her collar. She passed the bench where she and Jenna once sat long ago, arguing over brand colors and delivery schedules, and paused to look out over the frozen pond. She smiled. Not because she won, but because she let go. The snow kept falling that week, soft and steady, as if the world itself had slowed to listen. Without speeches or applause, Eleanor's quiet strength had reshaped not just a company, but the way people remembered what leadership could mean. Sometimes the kindest acts are the ones no one sees until they ripple outward like warmth through a cold room. Just like a porch light left on for someone finding their way home, grace has a way of illuminating paths we didn't know we needed, and maybe someone hearing this will pass on that same light to someone else.